Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's forward motion session. In 2023, TIO is encouraging forward motion to ensure we're providing our members and stakeholders with the most current and relevant resources to allow them to be successful at the pace at which they're ready. Forward motion is the title of our stakeholder call series, and these will be scheduled on an as-needed basis, featuring presentations from industry experts on a specific topic, event, opportunity, or service that you may want to be involved in to make your business succeed. We recognize that our work as an industry, as a business, and as leaders, and the work of our community partners takes place on the traditional territories of the Anishinaabe, Cree, and Haudenosaunee. We acknowledge that there are 46 treaties and other agreements that cover the territory we now call Ontario, and we are treaty people. We are thankful the original hosts welcomed visitors to work, live, and benefit in these territories. And we are thankful for the Anishinaabe, Cree, and Haudenosaunee who have cared for these territories for thousands of years. And we're thankful for the Indigenous community who continues to celebrate the strength of Ontario. Today, we have the pleasure of having Evan Heisenberg, Director of Labor Market Intelligence at Tourism HR Canada, delivering the final session of the Building a Resilient and Vibrant Workforce series. With the tourism sector facing a serious staffing crisis, employers need to get creative and smarter in how they build and sustain their workforce. As we move towards a new normal of a fluid and dynamic labor force, fostering a focus on skills and competencies rather than jobs will really allow us to reach an untapped potential of everyone we work with. Now, I want to hand things over to Evan. So Evan, over to you.
Thank you very much. Please stick with me during the obligatory awkwardness of screen changeover. Let's see if that is working. Does that work, Simone? Is that showing what it should be showing?
Yes.
Excellent. All right. So welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us for the last webinar in the Labor Force Recovery series. My name is Evan Heisenberg. As Simone said, I'm the Director of Labor Market Intelligence at Tourism HR Canada, and I'm going to be your host today. So the Labor Force Recovery series is proudly presented by Tourism HR Canada's Discover Tourism Initiative in partnership with the Tourism Industry Association of Ontario. Tourism HR Canada is a national human resources organization dedicated to building a world-class tourism workforce. Our goal is to support the recovery and growth of Canada's visitor economy with a skilled, diverse, inclusive, and resilient workforce. Our partner in this webinar series has been the Tourism Industry Association of Ontario, or TIO. TIO represents tourism businesses and employees across the province and advocates on behalf of its members on pressing policy issues that impact the Ontario tourism industry. I would like to thank the Government of Canada as well for their support and funding that has made it possible for us to develop the Labor Force Recovery webinar series. The series was created to provide information to you, tourism and employers of all sizes, from across all of Canada. We shared practical tools and information on how to make strategic business decisions related to workforce and HR management in the wake of the COVID-19 pandemic. For the past 4 months, we've presented webinars on hiring international talent, retaining employees, best practices for compensation, and building and retaining an Indigenous workforce. All of the live recordings and presentations for these webinars are available on TIO's website, and I encourage you to take a look at the creative and practical ways that we've recommended in terms of attracting and retaining skilled workers in your workplace. So here we go, technology. Here we go, okay, we're winning. So today's topic is the blended workforce. We'll begin by discussing the 3 main challenges employees are facing when it comes to attracting and retaining workers today. From there, we'll move on to looking at some of the dimensions of the solution, which is getting creative in our hiring practices and our retention practices. I'm going to go over the different categories of workers in the market right now and what they have to offer your business. We'll also look at how you can connect with different labor pools and ensure that your employment tools and resources meet the needs of these groups. And finally, I'll talk to you about how you can use technology to support your business. Throughout the entire webinar, I'll share practical resources that you'll be able to implement in your business right away. Today's webinar will be about an hour with about 10 to 15 minutes for Q&A at the end. So if you have any questions along the way, please jot them down, or you can use the chat function as well if you want to jot them down there. And we'll have some time at the end of the discussion to look at those questions. Some of them may be answered as we go along, but if not, we'll have some time to go through them together. So this webinar is being recorded, and you'll be able to access the recording and the presentation on Tayo's website later this week. So let's start by talking about the paradox of the tourism industry's recovery, while business owners are struggling day to day due to the labor shortage. The tourism industry is experiencing a surprisingly rapid recovery from the effects of COVID-19 pandemic, particularly on the demand side, with domestic and international visitors returning to explore our country in huge numbers. Statistics Canada reports that in January, the overall number of international arrivals in Canada was 78.4% of the level at the same time in 2020, just before the pandemic hit. So when comparing January 2023 and January 2022, the same study shows that international travelers took 3 times as many trips and US residents took 4 times the number of trips to Canada this year as compared to last year. And according to the World Travel and Tourism Council's 2023 Economic Impact Research Report published this May, the Canadian tourism sector is projected to contribute $162.6 billion to the Canadian economy this year, which is a 17.2% increase on 2022. In fact, we expect to see a full recovery of tourism spending by the end of 2024. So we're getting near to the point where things are expected to recover to normal, or to pre-pandemic normal. But in spite of this influx of visitors, Canadian tourism businesses are experiencing a significant workforce shortage, with 100,000 fewer employees than in 2019. And 20% of the population sees the tourism industry as a not particularly desirable place to work. So these are two pressures facing the recruitment and retention of a workforce to support this increased demand in tourism. So the fact is, tourism offers a diverse array of opportunities from frontline jobs to executive level careers, but we're struggling to fill our open positions. Why is that? Through our research, Tourism HR Canada has found that there are 3 main challenges to building a vibrant tourism workforce. There are labor force supply issues, there are issues around labor force skills, and then there are systemic barriers to employment. So first, let's talk about labor force supply. In the post-pandemic economic climate, employers across Canada are struggling to find workers. And that's not just in tourism, that's everywhere. Competition for employees is fierce, both within the tourism sector and across other sectors. By the end of 2023, it's projected that Canada will be short 2.3 million workers. And our research shows it's likely that Canada's labor supply will fail to meet demand across all sectors over the coming decade. So to mitigate this shortage, the Government of Canada launched the Immigration Level Plan to help businesses attract international talent. However, there are challenges to this process. The process can be long, and it's hard to get approvals in time to meet business needs, particularly in a sector like tourism that can have to respond fairly quickly to sudden demands or drops in demand. The occupations highest in demand in the tourism industry are also often categorized into programs that are difficult to navigate, which can be off-putting, especially for small and medium enterprises who don't necessarily have a dedicated HR team that they can devote entirely to the process of hiring and retaining international workers. This isn't to say we shouldn't try. And earlier this year, we produced a webinar on building a seasonal workforce, which offers practical tips and useful resources on hiring internationally trained workers. If you're interested in pursuing this avenue, I recommend that you go back to the Forward Motion website and have a look at that recording there as well, and the resources associated with it. Our industry also, unfortunately, seems to suffer from a PR issue, which compounds the struggles business owners experience when attracting employees. So job seekers are either uninterested or unaware of the many jobs and careers available to them in the tourism sector. Furthermore, there is a perception that tourism industry jobs don't pay very well, which isn't always the case. So this is why Tourism HR Canada recommends tourism businesses introduce compensation packages that involve more than just a salary. This total compensation package includes competitive wages or salaries, as well as benefits like health insurance and perks like employee discounts. For more information on total compensation, check out the other webinar in this series called How Much Should I Pay?, which you'll also find on the Tayo website. The next key challenge involves labor force skills. This can mean a skills gap where workers don't have the skills they need to have to do a job. It can also be a skills mismatch where workers either have the wrong skills for the role that they're in, or they have the right skills for a job they're not currently doing. Or it could also mean that workers' skills are obsolete after the requirements changed. And we've seen quite a lot of that with people being temporarily laid off during COVID, coming back to a very changed business landscape. Suddenly they don't have the skills they used to have. And we also see this in line with a lot of technological advance as well. And finally, there are candidates who've been out of the workforce for an extended period of time and who return to their jobs to find that their existing skills have diminished due to lack of use. So on top of brushing up on existing skills, these workers also have to learn new policies and procedures that were introduced during the pandemic to ensure safety and enhance customer service. And the other issue with that is that continues to be a moving target. Regulations and recommendations change, so skills are also having to change on quite a rapid pace. Our research shows that between 20 and 40% of employees in the tourism workplace lack the skills that they need to do their job. That's a pretty shocking statistic, but that is what we have found. That doesn't mean they're incompetent. It means they don't have the right skill set to do the entirety of the job that they're hired to do. And this has a profound impact on our industry, which relies on its employees' skills and knowledge to provide world-class service to visitors. A lack of skills can lead to negative visitor experiences, bad reviews, low productivity, and inefficiency in the workplace, so it has a business impact as well. It can also affect turnover as employees quit because they feel unprepared or overwhelmed by their work. This also costs business owners who then have to budget even more money towards recruiting, onboarding, and training someone new. So in the long run, it's generally cheaper to hang on to good employees that you have, even if that involves a slightly higher upfront cost. You will see that in savings of not having to continuously hire and retrain new people. So addressing the mismatch between skills and job requirements is crucial for boosting productivity, reducing inefficiencies, minimizing errors and waste, preventing accidents on site, and cutting down on costs in the long run. By effectively managing how we allocate human resources, we can enhance productivity and make the most of people's talents. Moreover, recognizing and addressing the skills gaps helps individuals plan their career development, make informed decisions about lifelong learning, and increase their chances of progressing and earning higher wages. Ultimately, this plays an important part in retaining a skilled workforce. So we'll talk more about skill building when we discuss digital workplaces in a few minutes. The last challenge I want to touch on today is that tourism can present employment barriers and structural constraints that make it difficult for job seekers to work in our industry. This challenge can be further divided into issues relating to mobility, accommodations, for example, whether or not a workplace makes it possible for workers with disabilities to perform the essential duties of their jobs. And finally, there are social barriers as well. So mobility is a significant barrier to employment, particularly in tourism. Some tourism jobs require workers to be flexible and willing to relocate to different regions, whether long-term or short-term, or in the case of international talent, to move to Canada. And relocating can be challenging for individuals due to a number of reasons, such as having a family that have to travel with them or having to leave their family, personal commitments around other aspects of their life, and challenges in finding affordable housing. In some of our tourism hotspots, that is one of the biggest barriers to people working in tourism, is they just can't afford to live where they work. International workers sometimes face additional obstacles in having their credentials recognized, especially if they've obtained their qualifications overseas. And this lack of credential recognition can limit their employment prospects and hinder their career development. Infrastructure is another crucial aspect that affects employment opportunities in tourism. And this has to do with things like high housing costs, and the lack of affordable housing in tourism destinations that make it hard for workers to make sustainable living in regions that rely heavily on tourism. In addition, limited or non-existent public transportation options can also put financial pressures on workers around job opportunities that they might like to pursue, especially in remote and rural tourism destinations. Access to broadband internet can also pose another infrastructure barrier to leveraging the potential of technology and remote work to meet our current labor shortage. And this is a sort of Canada-wide problem. In some of the big cities, it's not bad. Some of the remote areas of the country, it's a little sketchier whether you can have reliable internet, and that impacts businesses. Accommodations for disabilities and language barriers present significant challenges also in the tourism industry. People with disabilities may face physical or attitudinal barriers that prevent them from fully participating in the workforce. Lack of accessibility in tourism establishments, such as hotels or attractions, can further restrict their employment options. Language barriers can also be a significant obstacle, particularly in multicultural tourism destinations. Individuals who don't speak the dominant language of the region may struggle to secure employment or communicate effectively with customers and colleagues. Another dimension is geography. Canada has a lot to offer visitors, particularly in rural and remote areas, where we can provide access to a wilderness experience that is simply impossible in much of the world. But there's a downside to this. There's a current trend towards urban concentration in Canada. More and more people are leaving rural and remote communities and moving into urban centers for a number of reasons, such as employment, access to resources and facilities, education, and social connection as well. But this concentration in urban centers leaves a labor vacuum in smaller communities, which can further exacerbate the underlying problems. The structures that encourage and support rural workforce development are complex and involve many players at all levels. So municipal, regional, provincial, and federal. Addressing these needs is beyond the scope of this webinar series, but it is something that tourism sector as a whole needs to pay attention to and get involved with, as our sector is directly impacted by these kinds of issues. Despite the rising demand for tourism, our industry's share of the workforce is shrinking. This is not good news. It means we need to focus on improving the productivity of the workers that we do have by investing in training and upskilling for both frontline workers and for management positions as well. We also need to get creative about the types of employees we hire. And I'll talk about how shared workers and contingent workers can complement your anchor team in a few minutes. Fundamentally, people are at the heart of tourism businesses. Every job seeker and employee brings a unique set of knowledges and skills to the workplace, and we need to celebrate the diverse experience and personal strengths of every individual because together they make up an adaptable and resilient team. Our challenge today is to attract enough workers in the short, medium, and long terms. The successful and sustainable recovery of the industry depends on all of us working together to build attractive and fulfilling tourism workplaces. We must aim to recruit new hires and keep them on as long-term employees, nurturing the future leaders of the industry. It's not to say there won't be part-time employees and a lot of turnover, that's natural in the sector, but we do need to work on having some long-term continuity in businesses for the stability and welfare of the business themselves. And to achieve this, we need to put people first. We need to value our workers' well-being, development, and satisfaction. And we can create an environment that attracts and retains top talent. This will assure the success of our businesses at the individual level and also contribute to the overall growth and prosperity of the tourism industry and sector as a whole. So the tourism sector, as we all know, is a dynamic and diverse industry offering a wide range of unique jobs and career opportunities. And we are renowned and well known for welcoming individuals from all backgrounds. We take pride in our workplaces where diversity is celebrated and every person's contributions are valued. One fantastic perk of working in tourism is the flexibility that it provides. With flexible hours, employees have the freedom to create a healthy work-life balance that suits their individual needs and priorities. Tourism has also become a valuable learning ground for those who are starting their careers or who are new to Canada. It offers a wealth of learning experiences that equip people with lifelong skills they can carry with them throughout their professional journeys. Given the diversity of our workforce, it's crucial that we customize our human resource practices to attract and support the individuals that we want to have and retain as part of our teams. Embracing inclusive policies and practices is a central focus in our industry. The COVID-19 pandemic has accelerated changes that were already transforming the way we work. Digitalization, remote work, distributed teams, virtual collaboration, and reskilling and upskilling have all become integral aspects of our new work reality. As the world continues to evolve, we must adapt and respond to economic, social, political, and environmental shifts, considering the impact on our industry and the people who make it thrive. As we navigate the path from recovery from the pandemic, we must acknowledge the fundamental changes in our sector and prioritize our workforce accordingly. It's essential that businesses learn how to operate with fewer employees and to complement our anchor team with shared workers and the contingent workforce, which is made up of freelancers, gig workers, consultants, and contractors. Tourism business owners must acknowledge that the future of their business depends on the people they employ. As a sector, tourism needs to lose the reputation of low-paying jobs, difficult managers, and poor working conditions. Our sector deserves better, and so do our people. Ultimately, it all comes down to being human. We need to focus on the relationships that we can build between employees and employers, as well as our connection with our communities. Just as we value our customers, we need to prioritize our internal customers, our employees. By creating better working environments, we empower our employees to create the unforgettable tourism experiences our industry is known for and that clients have come to expect. A business with a blended workforce engages employees with different types of work engagements. These arrangements can include part-time and full-time employees, temporary and seasonal workers, as well as contract and permanent staff. Resilience is baked into this model because it enables businesses and business operators to quickly scale up or to downsize its workforce in response to demand on the consumer end. Before we go further, let me tell you a bit about useful resources that I'll be referring to a bit moving forwards, and this has been mentioned in previous webinars as well. This is our Now Hiring Guide. It was developed to help tourism businesses begin their recovery from the COVID-19 pandemic. It includes short-term and long-term strategies to attract, retain, and grow a skilled workforce, offering a range of HR practices, tips to implement these new practices, and practical checklists and forms to stay on track. You can download the guide at no cost at the Tourism HR Canada website. And I encourage you to have a look at it. It has a lot of really good resources in it. It is also in the process of being updated. So if you download it now, check back again in a few months, there may be some new resources added. So in the Now Hiring Guide, the first strategy focuses on the blended workforce. As we know, competition for workers is already fierce and it's only going to get more difficult. So it's vital to modify our operations to find ways to work with fewer core employees while tapping into a shared supply of employees on an as-needed basis. First, let's define some of the terms so we're all on the same page. Your core team or your anchor team refers to the workers that you hire on a permanent or temporary basis who work under your supervision. They have signed contracts and receive an hourly wage or an annual salary plus benefits and perks in return for a set number of hours per week or pay period. They may work on a full-time or part-time basis, and they may be embedded throughout different positions in your organization. So you might have some frontline anchor teams, some mid-level management, and some high-level management anchor teams. These are the workers who are essential to the running of your business, both operationally and in terms of the institutional knowledge that they hold. A well-trained anchor team can work with shared and contingent workers on a fluid and dynamic basis to meet the shifting needs of your business. Shared workers are employed by multiple employers who coordinate working arrangements. As a business owner, you get to retain skilled workers without being solely responsible for providing full-time hours and wages. A carefully thought through approach on shared worker arrangements can also reduce costs in terms of benefits and training by sharing those costs across the different employers. And this can also help with long-term retention. On the other side of the equation, workers benefit by having full-time stable employment year-round and a range of opportunities in terms of skills development and training, and they get to be part of more than one dynamic workforce. So they're stimulated and they're challenged, and their life is not a boring kind of the same thing every day because they're involved in different workplaces. The Government of Canada introduced a work sharing program to help employers avoid layoffs when there's a temporary decrease in business activity and when this decrease is beyond the employer's control. Within the scope of this program, the work sharing agreement involves three parties: employers, employees, and Service Canada. So the government has engaged a process to help facilitate this. More information on this program is available online, and the link will be provided with the presentation on TAIO's Forward Motion webpage. You can also take the initiative to create your own agreement to share workers with another business in your community. If you decide to take this step, be sure you have a clear agreement that outlines how the arrangement will work, including payment, vacation, holidays and sick leave, termination, and how to manage disputes. We recommend having a lawyer review any agreements you draw up, particularly the first time you do this, to ensure that you've covered all the necessary bases and that everything is in your best interest. And we expect to see these kinds of arrangements becoming more common in the coming years. A good example is in areas with seasonal employment. For example, somewhere that offers skiing in the winter and golf and hiking in the summer. those two industries within sort of the sector both have seasonal workforces, but can't really necessarily offer full-time work on their own all year round. So local businesses with non-overlapping high seasons can join together to offer year-round work spread across different work sites, working for different companies, meaning that each company gets to retain trained and motivated employees year after year, and the employees can start to think ahead a bit more in terms of career development. Finally, we have the contingent workforce, which includes freelancers, gig workers, consultants, and contractors. And this is a category of workers who are compensated based on either a one-time project or on a series of short-term engagements with limited commitment on either side. There's a lot of flexibility when it comes to this category of workers, including the type of work they do and the time commitment involved. For example, you might hire an immigration consultant to help recruit and hire international talent, or you can engage a contractor to provide a service over a particular period of time, like snow removal in the winter or landscaping services in the summer, if you don't have the capacity to do that in your own business. Gig workers and freelancers tend to be engaged for shorter term and specific assignments. Gig workers that the tourism industry may employ include virtual assistants, caterers, people in some of the positions in a kitchen, hotel concierge, some of the administrative tasks, event planners, website designers. You can also, there are apps that will help you manage gig workforce in more skilled positions, like in housekeeping or in landscape and horticulture, things like that, or in the kitchen as well. So there are apps where people can have very flexible working arrangements, very much on their own terms. You can find gig workers on virtual job boards and in community centers, sort of in-person job boards. Those things still exist, I'm told. And there's also a number of apps available to help you tap into that aspect of the gig economy. There's one more category they haven't discussed yet, and that's remote workers. This category spans all the others and has become increasingly common during and after the pandemic. Not all roles in tourism businesses require staff to be on site, and that gives business owners access to labor markets outside their regional boundaries. Now, a lot of the jobs in tourism do require people to interact directly with visitors. And so those really do need to be covered in person, but there are also a number of jobs that can be done remotely. Some tourism examples include customer service support, event registration managers, corporate or personal travel consultants, guest service specialists, people working in accounting or sales, HR management, and more things like that. So things that don't directly interact with customers or with visitors doesn't necessarily need to be done on site. And tourism businesses owners may also have team members that offer a specific service, such as bookkeeping, social media management, that don't necessarily need to be on site in order to fulfill their roles. So this is a shift in thinking that we tend to think of tourism as being very in-person, engaged one-to-one, and that's true for a lot of the frontline stuff. You know, your housekeeper has to be there, your cook has to be there, your tour guide has to be there. But the people who manage some of that don't necessarily have to be there, allowing for either fully remote working or hybrid work arrangements, where people are on site on the days that they are actually working with people, but they can work remotely on days when they're doing more administrative tasks. So now that we've defined all of our key terms, let's talk about some of the blended workforce. Essentially, a blended workforce has an anchor team that's supported by gig workers and shared workers. It's a flexible model that allows you to expand your team when you need to and reduce it quickly when the demand is lowered. Tourism is first and foremost about people. And if we want our workers to stay, we need to create a team-centric work culture that truly and authentically engages with workers. And that sometimes means a shift in mindset. So everybody comes to their job with a unique blend of strengths and skills that enables companies to grow and to be agile. When you're hiring, focus on the skills that you need, not what looks good on paper or the exact list of the previous the exact list of qualifications of the last person who held the job. When you're hiring someone new, you have the opportunity to change things up a little bit and to introduce new skills into the job, and that can also shift the job. For example, you might decide as a company you need to hire a front desk attendant and you need to hire someone to handle your social media. If you pick the right person, that could be one person actually who does both those jobs. So the best candidate is the person who's willing to learn and grow with the job and who's bringing skills and creative thinking to the position. Putting people first also extends to your existing employees. When you provide opportunities for employees to use their skills and to develop their interests, you're giving them job satisfaction and the variety that they're looking for in the workplace. Finding projects based on individual employee strengths fuels engagements and builds loyalty to your business. Think about your current team. What are their strengths and interests? Are you making the most of them? It's always an illuminating exercise to do a skills audit to see what talent you're already employing that you're not aware of. Maybe the person who's washing dishes in the kitchen or is working in the laundry room can fix a problem that you've been struggling with. And you'll never know unless you ask. So a key component of putting people first is to establish open communication with your team. Make it clear that they can come to you with questions or ideas. In a recent TIO webinar, Aaron Binder from Toronto's Go Tours mentioned that an employee approached him one winter. The employee had said they weren't very interested in the role they'd been assigned for the quiet winter months. Instead, they wanted to develop new tour content. Binder agreed, and his employee got to work on planning exciting new tours that would attract new customers to the business. Referring to this experience, Binder recommends that employers ask workers the following questions. What do you want to do? How can you invest in this company? And how can we invest in you to keep you on our team? So this is a good model of that person-centered, or a good example of that person-centered model that allowed the business to, working with the team they already had, to develop new product lines that helped the business grow, and that gave the employee a very satisfying work experience. So this was just one example of the type of people-first mindset that will help you keep your employees engaged and loyal to your business. Your talent is the most important resource. It's appreciating that they are an investment that drives profit, not a cost that is detrimental to business. Without them, no tourism business can exist, let alone thrive. Businesses that invest in their employees do so not only financially, but also in terms of the workplace culture. Making reasonable accommodations to individual needs while making sure foundational needs are met will give you a healthy, happy workforce who are willing to invest their own time and energy in your business. As more and more businesses embrace the blended workforce, gig workers will come into your business with lots of different skill sets gained by working a range of different jobs in different companies and in different industries and sectors. Smart business owners will see these skills as the treasure trove they are and look for ways to capitalize on those skills. Rather than focusing on the experience that an applicant lacks, so maybe they've never worked in a restaurant before, or they're new to outdoor recreation, a smart employer will recognize the skills that they do have, what they're bringing from their previous experience in other industries and sectors, and work out a plan for training in the core areas while maximizing the possibilities for skills transfer. Scheduling flexibility is one of the main reasons people leave their jobs. Job instability is one of the key points that employees mention in exit interviews. And a lot of tourism jobs tend to traditionally have quite unpredictable work schedules, which means workers can't necessarily rely on a regular paycheck. And that's especially true for seasonal positions. And there are many ways to tackle this one. Again, it doesn't necessarily cost more. In fact, it can save you money, and you will have fewer sleepless nights as an operator. So working around flexibility and scheduling is an opportunity for you to leverage your community connections and work with other businesses to design flexible and creative work schedules. A lot of people who have part-time jobs work more than one job. They'll have more than one part-time job. Even some people with full-time jobs will be economically sort of driven to take on a part-time job as a second job. And so people are juggling a lot of different commitments in their timing of their life. So this is an opportunity for you to leverage your community connections and work with other businesses to design these flexible and creative work schedules. And there are a couple of different directions you might want to take, or you might want to incorporate all of them. These include flex time, where an employee works a full day but can choose their working hours. You might also implement a compressed work week, where an employee works longer days in exchange for a day off within a specific time frame. So for example, working 45 minutes extra for 9 work days to get the 10th day off. You can also introduce job sharing by working with other companies to build a coordinated schedule of shared workers. If you and 2 businesses got together, you could create enough hours for a full-time year-round position, so your employee would have the benefit of reliable full-time paychecks, but you would only have to pay 1/3 of that salary. You may also consider reserving the budget to retain skilled workers even during down periods. Providing a paycheck year-round, even when employees aren't working, will pay off with respect to increasing retention and reducing your time and effort to scale up services or to look for staff when ramping up your busy season. During the slower periods, your employees can be involved in developing new products or new marketing strategies, or being cross-trained to become more involved in the business as a whole, which puts them in a better position in terms of promotion and keeping that institutional knowledge in-house. Other workers may appreciate the opportunity for gradual retirement, where they reduce working hours or workload for a period of time before leaving the workforce altogether. Other ways to be flexible include accommodating the personal needs of your workers. This could mean scheduling that allows for daycare drop-off and pickup, as well as providing time off for religious holidays. Flexible work arrangements like these lead to better ability to attract and retain workers. It reduces absenteeism and increases job satisfaction. Technology can also help manage these arrangements. Apps that allow part-time workers to choose their own shifts and to effortlessly swap shifts between themselves. These kind of apps already exist and are getting increasingly sophisticated. So a lot of the heavy lifting on making these kinds of changes has already been done for you. You just need to do a bit of exploring to figure out what is the best solution for your business. So let's talk a little bit about who gig and contract workers are, where you'll find them, and how to integrate them into your workplace. As I mentioned earlier, rather than being employed full-time, some workers prefer to work on a temporary or project basis, often for multiple clients or companies at the same time. They provide their skills and services to clients as needed, sometimes remotely, and these arrangements are often by contract. Others work on a more rolling basis, but according to their own availability or interests. Think, for example, of Uber drivers or those independent food delivery drivers. They work for an organization, but they set their own hours. These are what we think of when we think of gig workers. So while some tourism jobs need specific skills or talents and a more long-term commitment to the business, there are a lot of jobs that could be made available to gig workers, particularly when the staffing needs of the business fluctuate dramatically throughout the year. According to Stats Canada, 1 in 10 Canadians opt into gig or contract work, which can unlock an incredible labor market to business owners who are looking for skilled and motivated talent, but don't necessarily have the business size or capacity to retain a large staff full-time. You can find gig workers via several different networks. There are online platforms like Upwork, Freelancer, Fiverr, and TaskRabbit, which allow you to post job descriptions or projects and browse through profiles of available candidates. You can also leverage your own professional network by reaching out to colleagues and industry contacts or attending events and conferences. Finally, some fields have dedicated communities such as industry-specific websites, forums, or social media groups. And engaging with these specialized communities can help you identify and connect with gig workers and find the expertise that you need. When integrating contract workers into your workplace, it's important to begin with open and direct communication. Make sure they understand your expectations in addition to the project requirements, the deadlines, and the roles and responsibilities that they're being tasked with. You need to provide necessary onboarding materials and resources to help contract workers understand your business's cultures, values, and processes. And you need to offer training and provide regular feedback so that workers understand how they're fitting into the business. So a lot of these principles apply equally to contract work and to gig workers. But with gig workers, you may be employing them for an extended period of time, but over a series of very short durations and across different types of positions possibly. And the important thing in managing a gig workforce is to make sure that your workplace is one that they want to come back to. you're sort of micro training them. And the more often they come, the less training they need each time they come. And so you have a return on investment, even with gig workers who are sort of by definition not exclusively working for you. And as they become more familiar with your business, they'll be able to work more independently and with less supervision and require less micro training each time you bring them on. And they can actually become important and very reliable members of your team. And so remember also that gig and contract workers often have different working styles and preferences compared to your core team. They're looking for different things financially, and they're probably looking for a bit more flexibility. So being understanding to that and open to adapting your workplace practices to accommodate their needs is the key to building this kind of this core team of, core is not the right word, but this very reliable network of gig workers that you can call on and you know they're going to be there when you need them. So let's shift our focus briefly from job categories to the people who are likely to fill those roles in tourism businesses. In the Now Hiring Guide, which I already mentioned, we talk about why and how tourism businesses should diversify their workforce. As we've discussed, competition for labor is fierce, and we need to actively welcome new labor markets into the workplace. Tourism businesses that have policies and practices that encourage diversity and promote equality and equity and inclusion are more able to attract and retain talent. Building a diverse workforce has positive benefits internally within your staff, and it will also impact your customers and the community around you. It leads to a positive reputation for your business, it increases visibility in the marketplace, and it creates a more diverse talent base. When you employ diverse talent, you also gain a broader range of skills, experience, and perspectives within your business, which can also lead to increased productivity and therefore to higher profits. So to build this diverse workforce, you need to connect with a lot of different labor pools, including Indigenous people, international workers, both people overseas and already in Canada, and people with disabilities. In particular, there's a vast pool of internationally trained talent that can not only fill vacancies, but can enrich and improve tourism businesses. Investing in international talent can mean many things. It can involve hiring talent already living in Canada, such as immigrants, settled refugees, international students, and displaced persons, or it can involve hiring temporary workers who are living overseas. As always, we recommend putting people first and looking at the skills each individual can bring to your business. Then consider how you can supplement their knowledge, skills, and experience with on-the-job training, mentorship, or other professional development opportunities. And as you develop your strategy for diverse inclusion in your workplace, consider the challenges or barriers facing the demographic groups you'd like to attract. For example, consider whether your workplace is accessible to people with disabilities, whether there's affordable housing and public transportation that employees can use to get to work. Are there mental health supports, training, and development opportunities that give all demographics on your workforce the opportunity to learn and grow with the organization? Canada's flexible immigration system and innovative programs can help you attract and retain the right talent to fill labor shortages and bring new skills to boost your competitive edge. The immigration system is an excellent way to support your hiring needs and to drive economic growth. And there are several immigration streams that you can access for workers in the tourism sector. But the immigration system can be daunting and hard to understand and to navigate. To help you, we've created a series of infographics that you can download for free from the website on the screen. These serve as a roadmap to help you figure out where to start and which programs you might want to use. For more information on diversifying your workforce, I encourage you to take a look at the Now Hiring Guide, which we already mentioned, and to check out some of our previous webinars, which are available on the TIO's Forward Motion page, as well as Tourism HR Canada's YouTube channel. So the previous webinars are still available, and there's a lot of good information in those and associated with them. As we've discussed, the tourism industry offers a wide range of appealing job opportunities. It's a diverse sector where employees can grow professionally while having the chance to interact with people from around the world and develop key customer service and teamwork skills. To attract and retain workers in the tourism sector, we need to highlight the benefits of working in the field and to tailor messaging, particularly recruitment messaging, to different demographic groups. So Tourism HR Canada recently analyzed the types of workers in our sector and saw the opportunity to dive deeper and gain an understanding of their motivations at a more nuanced level. So our research has led us to develop 5 worker archetypes, which we're, for now, calling adventurers, first jobbers, new Canadians, mature workers, and second acts. And it's important to note that these types are not exhaustive or exclusive. You may find some employees don't fit easily into any of these categories, or others match more than one category. And the reason that I'm sharing these with you today is to paint a deeper picture of the people who will help your business succeed, whether they're on your core team, as a gig worker, or as a shared worker with other employers, either other tourism employers or from other sectors altogether. And I'm not going to go into these in too much depth because I talked about them in a bit more depth in the compensation webinar. So I encourage you to go back and take a look at that if you haven't already seen it, but it's worth it just to remind ourselves that the different factors that bring people into the tourism workforce are going to be different depending on who you're talking about. So the first type we'll touch on are the adventurers. The people in this group tend to be young, often students, and they may be international talent experiencing Canada on a working holiday visas. Adventurers are generally looking for a job that supports their lifestyle, and they prioritize variety, fun, and social experiences. This group tends to want flexible hours and let them have the work-life balance that they crave. Next up, we have first jobbers, who also tend to be young. They may have limited professional experience, but they also aren't really sure what they want to do with their lives. They may not think of tourism as a potential career path, and this is where professional development and mentoring can show them the opportunities available in the sectors. First jobbers want to gain skills they can put on their resume and often work frontline jobs in addition to customer service and administrative support jobs. The next group, the new Canadians, covers quite a wide age range. And so we can sort of divide them into 2 groups, first generation youth or newly arrived adults. And this broad demographic tends to see tourism as a good opportunity. And they're often open to the idea of long-term career in the sector. New Canadians are eager to gain skills that would lead to job security and growth. And in particular, newly arrived adults want a stable workplace that offers recognition for prior experience and qualifications earned in their country of origin. New Canadians of all ages tend to gravitate towards a welcoming workplace that values diverse cultures. The mature workers demographic is, they're at a point in their lives where priorities are changing in their personal, family, and financial lives, and they're looking for meaningful work that's challenging and has a purpose. Finally, we have second acts, who are often coming to tourism after a career in another sector. They may be changing careers, they may be taking on a second job, or seeking additional retirement income. Second acts have valuable skills and practical abilities that benefit the businesses they work for. They're often attracted to work that lets them give back and help others and prioritize a workplace culture that is aligned with their values. So as I said, we've already talked about these archetypes in our webinar on compensation called What Should I Pay? But we thought it was worth mentioning them again because ultimately this is about people, who is looking for jobs in tourism, and what you can do to attract them and retain them in your business. For whatever type of employment someone is looking for, we should try to be as welcoming and supportive as we can. So let's walk through a brief hypothetical scenario that can illustrate what a blended workforce might look like. Let's imagine that I run a motel in the Ottawa Valley, where I'm an active member of the tourism community. The motel caters to outdoorsy types who enjoy hiking in the rolling hills and refueling at the breweries and coffee shops in the region. My core team is small but mighty, and they work hard to create lasting memories for our guests. I'm approached by 2 guests who've been coming to my hotel on a regular basis to ask if they could hold their reception or their wedding reception at my hotel, because this is where they met and fell in love. My first instinct is to say no, because this is something I've never done before, and I don't have the in-house capacity to look after everything they'll need. But it's also a good opportunity for my business. So after some thinking about it, I decide to say yes, and I put on my creative thinking hat. First, I hire a local event organizer on contract to help keep things on track. And they work with the guest's wedding planner to make sure that we're providing everything that they want. I particularly need to think about food because my hotel or my motel doesn't have a kitchen, but a wedding is going to need food. So I talk with the clients about what they want to offer to their guests. And once I have a sense of what they want, I start looking locally. My event organizer and I work out agreements with a local restaurant to provide the catering for the event, with a local bar for wine and Prosecco, and with a local microbrewery for other refreshments. The event organizer arranges the temporary licenses that I need and coordinates most of the logistics for the event. I offer extra hours to my usual crew of part-time staff to help support the event overall. The motel is typically at about half capacity in the fall when the wedding will take place. That tends to work out well because 2 of our housekeepers are in the second act of their career and they spend their winters in Florida, which unfortunately in this case leaves me with only 2 housekeepers on my core team. I'd like to be sure the motel is sparkling clean for our guests, so I use an app that matches hospitality owners with trusted cleaners, and I hire 3 additional housekeepers for the wedding weekend itself. I use another app to find some groundskeepers to help set up the outdoor space. By contracting out some of the work, reaching out to other businesses in my community, and tapping into the local gig economy, I'm able to put on an event that is outside the scope of my normal operations. My blended workforce, my core team who will run the hotel, and the contract and gig employees who will manage the event itself, allowed me to expand my business on a short-term basis. When the wedding is done, I can return to my normal operations. And I also now know that I can do this kind of event in the future when and if the need arises. So before we move into the Q&A, I just want to touch briefly on this question of technology and how it can support your business. Today, the most valuable skill in any workplace is the ability to learn new skills. Everything we know now will one day be obsolete, especially when it comes to technology. So it's essential to embrace the mindset of constant learning and adaptability. The pandemic accelerated the impact of digitalization on tourism, and major changes to business models and operational needs triggered big shifts in the workplace. First, it's helpful to conduct a technology audit with your team to get an idea of the tools you use on a daily basis, including things like social media management, meeting schedulers, live chat, and internal messaging. Ask yourself if the tools are saving you and your team time. Consider whether any of them overlap and could be consolidated or replaced. Look for opportunities to use technologies for routine tasks, which then allows your employees to focus on what they do best, the customer experience. Technology can support a blended workforce in a variety of ways. For example, a translation app can help an employee communicate effectively with a customer who is fluent in another language. You can also use apps that make it easy for your team to communicate with each other. For example, enabling them to switch shifts without having to get managers involved. Your staff onboarding and training can get a boost from virtual reality, augmented reality, and other digital tools. These tools allow workers to enter actual work situations so they can practice new skills while being evaluated on whether they've acquired the skills they need for their job. They can even stimulate stressful, demanding, and surprising situations they might encounter on their jobs. As an added benefit, when you offer innovative training opportunities, prospective employees will see your business as a dynamic environment that engages its workers in continual professional development. Focusing on these opportunities during the hiring phase is an effective way to attract new talent. As well as being attractive features that draw in employees for your core team, digital tools can also make it easy to find and hire gig workers. There are gig apps that will help you hire gig workers by posting jobs and viewing worker profiles. They're convenient and give you access to workers within your region for in-person tasks and beyond for remote opportunities. With the right digital tools, your team will be more productive, innovative, and engaged. The effective use of technology can help you boost your service offerings, which contributes to increased productivity and will help you keep the doors open during a tight labor market. For more information and ideas on using technology to support your workforce, take a look at the Now Hiring Guide, where Section 4 offers expert tips and examples of digital tools that get results. And you can also work with your existing workforce, particularly younger people. Talk to them. What tools do they use? What technology do they use? Where do they look for work? It may not be where you think it is, and so you may be missing accessing pools of talent because you're just operating on different platforms. All right, so that brings us to the end of the bit where I do all of the talking, and brings us to the Q&A portion of the webinar. And by now you may or may not have a question or two that you'd like to have answered. So I will stop sharing my screen at this point so that That's not what I meant to do. Stop share. There we go. So that Simone can rejoin us if there are any questions in the chat or in the Q&A section that need moderating. I will let Simone handle that part of it. And I welcome any questions that you may have.
We do already have one question. It is, does the lack of skills or skills mismatch refer to soft skills or hard skills, or a combination of both?
These days, it really refers to both. The soft skills are often seen as particularly lacking in younger employees currently. People who finished high school or university during COVID have just not had the same opportunities for social interaction. And we know some employees who are finding themselves having to train in basic interpersonal skills, which they're not prepared to do because they've never had to do it before. That becomes a skill set that workers have to, or that employees rather, have to invest in. But it also includes those sort of more job-specific skills. Often a productive way to think about this is to sort of separate this task-specific skills from the underlying competencies that they need. So if you need someone to, fold napkins in a very specific way for a very, high-end restaurant, or if the beds need to be made in a very specific way, you might not find someone who's used to doing things that way. But if you find someone who is tactile, and who is very, very detail oriented. So those are sort of underlying competencies and underlying skills and abilities. You can map those onto those job specific skills and give them the specific training they need. So that also involves a slight shift for some employers in what they're looking for in an interview and in an applicant. Thinking about the skills that can be taught versus the competencies that have to be there in order for those skills to be learned. And that can be a shift in thinking, but it can be a productive one. I hope that answered the question.
That was a very good answer. So I also hope it answered that question. I'm not seeing any other questions at the moment, but if anyone, you can always send us your questions after the session and we can up with you. So I think that might be the end of this session.
Excellent. So as I mentioned, this webinar has been recorded, and you'll be able to access the recording and the presentation on TAIO's Forward Motion page, as well as via the Tourism HR Canada's YouTube channel. They'll be available later this week, and you can also access all the previous ones there as well. So if you missed one, or if you want to go back and rewatch anything, I know I've made reference to a few of the earlier ones as well. The content all sort of crosses over to a certain extent because it's all about trying to meet that labor need that we're facing as a sector. So I hope you enjoyed joining us throughout these webinar series. And I want to thank again our partners at TAIO who have produced a fantastic series and allowed us to share what we've learned over our years of operation. And also I want to flag up again, this was brought to you by THRC's Discover Tourism Initiative. And for up-to-date labor market information, practical human resource development tools, and other useful resources, we invite you to visit Discover Tourism at www.discovertourism.ca. You'll find a whole lot of useful resources, including the Now Hiring Guide, particularly as it gets updated. So as this webinar draws to a close, I want to thank you very much for joining me today. You can, if you have any questions that came to you as soon as we stop the webinar, this is my experience with these things. As soon as you log off, you think of something, oh, why didn't I ask that? Please get in touch with us. You can contact us at info@tourismhr.ca with your questions, and we'll do our best to find an answer for you. So thank you very much. And we hope this was helpful for you on some level.
It definitely was. Yeah, if you need to go back and look at those resources, again, they're on our website, or the contact information for any of our experts from Tourism HR Canada. So thank you so much, Evan. I want to give a huge thank you to Tourism HR Canada for presenting this series. And thank you all for joining us, and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.